Welcome to Chapter 23, Part 1. This is the digestive system, and this is a short recording of an introduction to this system before we move into the anatomy and physiology of the digestive system. So the digestive system is nothing more than a twisted muscular tube that opens to the outside world through your mouth and then travels through your abdominal cavity and exits through the anus. I have heard someone describe the human body as a donut with a hole through the middle, which is true, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. But your digestive system is a muscular tube, and it's hollow, that takes in food through all the twisting and turning. Will go through multiple organs to break it into smaller pieces and then chemically digest it, absorbing the nutrients and before getting rid of the waste that we don't need. So the process of bringing food into the body is called ingestion. That occurs in your mouth. The process of breaking down food physically into smaller pieces and then chemically into teeny tiny substances that can be absorbed into the blood is called digestion. Absorption is the movement of those nutrients from the digestive tract, so from the hollow tube into the blood so that the nutrients can be distributed throughout the body. And egestion is excretion of solid waste. So that's getting rid of the parts that we don't need. There are two types of digestive organs. The alimentary canal, which is the hollow tube, mouth to anus. The space within the tube is called a lumen. And the alimentary canal are all the organs that touch the food, come in contact with the food, break down the food, absorb the food, or move the food. That tube, like I said before, is open to both sides of the body. The accessory organs are organs and glands that don't touch the food, but provide necessary secretions, enzymes, digestive juices, water, mucus, those kind of things that help us break down the food and make it available for absorption. Let me go back to this picture right here. So here you see the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach is this pouch right here, the beginning of the small intestine. All of this is small intestine. And you'll see we have three parts to the small intestine: duodenum, jejunum, ileum. Then the small intestine joins the large intestine here, goes up, across, down, over, and out. That's the large intestine. So those are all the organs of the alimentary canal. All of those are a muscular tube made of smooth muscle. And then you'll see the liver, this large reddish brown organ right here, the gallbladder, a little green sac right here, and then this yellow that's kind of behind the stomach, that's the pancreas. And these up here are the salivary glands. Those are the accessory organs that we will study as well. Oh, sorry, there's another picture right there. So I've got accessory organs in blue and the alimentary canal in black. So mouth, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, jejunum. There's no division between the jejunum and the ileum. It's just the jejunum is the middle part, right? So this is the duodenum, is the beginning part of the small intestine. It's only about 10 inches long. Then you've got 20 feet here of jejunum and ileum. The ileum joins the large intestine here, goes up, over, down, across, and out. Just like we talked about the membranes in the respiratory system, we should talk about the membranes and linings in the abdominal cavity. So in the thoracic cavity, up there where the lungs are, the linings are called pleura. In the abdominal cavity, the linings are called peritoneum. So those are the divisions. If you hear any word that says about peritoneum, you know that we're talking about below the diaphragm, in front of the spine, the abdominal cavity. We have two Serous membranes, remember, a serous membrane is a slippery membrane that makes the lubricant serous fluid. That's very much like WD-40 or that slippery silicone stuff that you put in your hair. Visceral always means the organ. So the visceral peritoneum is going to be a slippery lining that's on the outside of all organs: stomach, intestine, liver, gallbladder, all of that. Parietal peritoneum, parietal always means cavity wall. So the parietal peritoneum is going to be what lines the inside of the cavity here. So blue that's wrapping these organs is visceral peritoneum. This red is the parietal peritoneum, and everything in the yellow is the peritoneal cavity, which often I'll call the abdominal cavity. So that's just all the space in between there. Mesenteries are a special type of the serous, of the visceral peritoneum. So they are still what covers the organ. And I want to show you here. So this is small intestine, and your small intestine is like a 20-foot long garden hose, but it's not just a 20-foot garden hose shoved into your abdominal cavity. The loops of intestine are joined by this little thin membrane right here, which is the mesentery. And not only does it support the intestines and kind of keep them from getting bunched up or moving around too much, it also provides a connective tissue area to bring in the blood vessels. So this is going to be the blood vessels that branch from the descending aorta, primarily the celiac trunk and the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. Remember, we talked about mesenteric arteries. Those are the arteries that are going to feed these mesenteries that we find in the small intestine. We also have veins. Remember, the hepatic portal vein is the vein that drains all of the digestive organs. And then additionally, we will find routes for the lymphatics. We'll find lymphatic tissue in two parts of the digestive system. One in MALT, remember, mucosal associated lymphatic tissue, that'll be in tonsils and Peyer's patches and appendix. And then we'll also find the lacteals, which are the special endings of the lymphatic capillaries in the digestive system that are there to pick up the big fats that are too big to go into the hepatic portal vein. All right, so these are the mesenteries. They're very cool in when you get to touch them. Very delicate. You could easily poke your finger through that, but they're very important to keep the intestines from getting all kinked up, and also to make sure that they have the blood supply. All right, let's look at digestive processes. So throughout our study of digestive anatomy and physiology, we're going to want to know which organs are responsible for which digestive processes. And there'll be lots of overlap. Right? Ingestion is getting nutrients in, eating essentially, or drinking. And that only happens in the mouth. Propulsion and motility is the movement of food through the alimentary canal. Remember the alimentary canal? Big muscular tube. So every single organ of the alimentary canal is responsible for propulsion and motility, because we have to keep moving along. So we have little muscles that are kind of squeegeeing it along so that it moves throughout from mouth to anus. We will see the word swallowing, obviously, is going to be a voluntary action, moving the food from the mouth into the esophagus. So once we get to the esophagus, everything is involuntary, and we call that movement peristalsis. That is propelling the weight through waves of smooth muscle. So again, think if you were trying to get something out of a tube, how you kind of like squeeze, pushing it down. And those are contractions of smooth muscle that do that. So every organ in the alimentary canal experiences peristalsis. Well, let me take that back. Esophagus to rectum. So the mouth, we don't experience peristalsis, we have swallowing. The accessory organs are not involved in propulsion or motility. They are involved in secretion. So all accessory organs are going to secrete something important to help us digest food. Some of those things are going to be digestive juices or digestive enzymes. Those are we call exocrine glands. They secrete through a duct. And then remember our friend, the endocrine glands. We're going to look at different hormones that direct the secretion of juices. There are going to be different hormones that control motility, movement through the digestive tract as well. So all accessory organs will secrete something. It might be an endocrine secretion, it might be an exocrine secretion. And most of the alimentary canal organs secrete something as well, even if it's just mucus to keep things moving along. All right, here's a picture of peristalsis. So I like to remember peristalsis propulsion, PP. So peristalsis is movement of food, and it's this squeezing action. So if this green thing is a blob of food that you have eaten, muscle is going to contract here, move it down. Then the next muscle here is going to move it down, and then here. So that's, we have alternating contractions, but propulsion is forward movement. It is not digestion. Digestion is breaking down food, but it is forward movement. Segmentation is stirring and mixing. Okay, so it's kind of this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Food is not making forward progress. We might squeeze a little bit forward, and then we're going to squeeze it back, squeeze it forward, squeeze it back, so that we can mix it up. So if you remember, peristalsis, propulsion, PP, segmentation, stirring, SS. But it's that squishing back and forth. All right, moving on with the last 3 digestive processes. Digestion, the act of digestion, is breaking down food. So if you ate a cheeseburger, you're going to have to make the cheeseburger move into some form of some substance that can be absorbed into the blood. So we have 2 forms of digestion: mechanical and chemical. Mechanical is chopping it up into smaller pieces. So if you ate a hamburger, it is now just smaller pieces of hamburger that have not been chemically changed at all. Mechanical comes in several different forms: chewing, obviously mixing the food with your tongue, biting it with your teeth, and making smaller parts of the hamburger. When the hamburger gets to the stomach, we're going to have some churning and mixing, but we're not chemically absorbing anything in mechanical. We are just mixing it up, making it smaller pieces. It might end up looking like paste by the end of the time it moves the stomach, but remember, mechanical digestion doesn't change the food's chemical nature. It's still the same food, just like you put it in a blender by the time it got out of the stomach. Segmentation, we have talked about, is the mixing and the back and forth that we will see in the small intestine. All right, chemical digestion is using enzymes to break down the chemical bonds in the food and make them into the building blocks, if you will, of the food. So we're not going to be able to absorb broccoli directly into our blood. We're going to have to chop it up with our teeth, mix it with our stomachs, and then add some enzymes that will chemically digest it and break it down into teeny tiny glucose molecules that are small enough to be absorbed into the blood. Absorption is the movement of those chemical building blocks. So we're looking for glucose, we're looking for amino acids as the building blocks of proteins, and we're looking for fatty acids as the building blocks of fats. So these microscopic little tiny substances can then move from the lumen of the GI tract, is the other term for alimentary canal, and it's a little bit shorter, so you'll see that too. It stands for gastrointestinal, which means essentially stomachs and intestines. So absorption is the movement from these teeny tiny building block substances of the food into blood or lymph. Remember, some fats do move into the lymph. No proteins, no carbohydrates go into the lymph, only fats that are too big to go into the hepatic portal vein. Defecation is moving the waste substances out of the body. Elimination, you'll hear that word as well. These are all the indigestible substances or substances that our body just can't use or need at the time.